So unemployment in South Africa decreased slightly in the second quarter of the year. Data from Stats SA shows the official unemployment rate declined by 0.3% to 32.6% in that quarter. Unemployment improved marginally from 32.9% in the first quarter. Well, the survey shows that the number of employed persons increased by 154,000. The largest increase in employment was in the construction sector, followed by trade and government services. Declines were recorded in manufacturing, finance and transport. Unemployment remains very sticky and very high overall, with economic activity constrained by the power crisis as well as logistical challenges. Stats SA data shows the number of young people below the age of 35 that are not in any employment or training also went down, but very slightly, by 1.5% to 43.4% in the second quarter. So is this good news? The decline of 0.3% is very small, and remember that nearly 8 million people remain jobless in South Africa. Analysts had predicted no change, perhaps in response to the news, the rand strengthening a little further. For more on this, I'm joined by Johann Els, Group Chief Economist at Old Mutual. Mr. Els, thank you for being with us. Can we take any heart from a decline of 0.3%?
Well, that still is a very high unemployment rate, and as you say, almost 8 million people. So obviously this economy is constrained, and this economy is very weak and far weaker than what it should be given that level of unemployment. But I would rather focus on some of the positive news in terms of the total number of employed people. As you rightly said, 154,000 new jobs created in the second quarter compared to the first. And I think that's a positive that we can take away. And to me, that ties into what we've seen in the actual economic data in the second quarter. The fact that the economy is a bit more resilient than what we thought, given the extent of load shedding that we've experienced significantly since the beginning of this year. So if you look through the numbers, as you say, there's quite a few sectors that we had decent job growth. So despite the fact that the unemployment rate is still very high, we have to acknowledge that some people are coming back into the labor market and then get counted as unemployed officially, according to the definition. But that recovery from the COVID crisis and the recovery from job losses in the July 2021 unrests, that job recovery is ongoing, and at least that is a positive.
If the trend continues, could we get back to pre-COVID levels? We were speaking to Zwelithini Mavavi earlier, who was lamenting the fact that we're not even there yet.
Well, in actual fact, on a total basis, we've surpassed the pre-COVID employment numbers just before COVID. So in total basis, we've 47,000 jobs up from that level. It's within the private sector that we're still lagging. So the public sector, government and provincial governments and state-owned enterprises, they've recovered more than 206,000 jobs better than just before COVID hit us. It's on the private sector that we're still somewhat lower than that, but in an overall basis, we've actually gotten there, and that is a positive. But of course, the underlying situation is that very weak economic growth, very regulated labor market, etc. That is a negative impact in terms of overall employment.
If you look at the specific sectors, what's heartening? I saw construction adding jobs, despite the woes in construction. Surely that's a good economic indicator, but then manufacturing not doing so well.
Yes, I'm also slightly surprised by manufacturing, down in terms of quarter-on-quarter jobs, because the manufacturing sector actually did very well in the second quarter. To some extent, one would think that perhaps there's some ongoing productivity increases, better use or more use of machinery and equipment rather than labor. That's unfortunate, of course. But yeah, I'm surprised by that negative, but also the positive is construction jobs being added. So that, I think, is good for the construction sector and perhaps for GDP in the second quarter as well. But also, as you said, trade numbers improved, mining numbers improved. The mining number actually ties in with better mining production numbers also in the second quarter. So there's some Some of the numbers make sense, others I'm not so sure. It doesn't tie up to actual production. But the fact that there has been improvement in some of these sectors, that is a positive that I will take.
Yeah, I think we'll take what we can get. The structural issues that are constraining employment, we always talk about the structural issues, the power crisis, logistics. How do you think we're faring? I mean, this is a huge topic, but the moves towards fixing both of those, and are we doing the things we can in terms of giving investors political certainty? That's something they've also been crying out for.
Yes, obviously these things are overhanging investor sentiment. We're never doing enough. We're never doing it fast enough, of course, but we are at underlying position in this economy slowly improving. It's not as negative as it seems. It is negative, yeah, but there's some positives creeping in. And the one big positive is, of course, the fact that the private sector can go out and generate as much electricity as they want to. So that is a big driver of private sector activity in the economy, privatization by stealth, potential big driver of fixed investment cycle, and thus employment should gradually recover from that as well, because growth will gradually pick up a little bit from the dismal positions we are in. It's not going to be great, but it's an underlying improvement that will eventually drive investor confidence, business and consumer confidence, and gradually growth and employment as well.
Finally, Johann, one of the saddest figures is youth unemployment. So many people, even if they receive some sort of training, can't get that first job. Is there an economic answer to just starting to chip away at that, because there is so much hopelessness?
Yeah, faster, sustained economic growth. So we need growth of around 5-6% on a year after year after year. So sustained, stronger economic growth. That's the only way, the big way that we can make any inroads into that. But then, of course, whether it's right or wrong, the perception out there amongst businesses, investors, foreigners, is that South African labor is unskilled, militant, and too expensive. And we have to work on all three. And the skills one is a big one, because we need to change the education sector, and we haven't done a lot around that in the last 30 years. So there are some structural issues that's going to overhang this for a long time. So we need to do what we can to improve confidence through policy change, through continued private sector involvement in the economy. So better economic growth through policy change and improving confidence, and only then will we start to make some inroads. Unfortunately, there's no short-term or easy answer here. Yeah. So this is going to be an overhang on us for a very long time.
All right, thank you very much. Group Chief Economist at Old Mutual, Johann Els.